Hey, it's me again, day two. My husband is fond of saying I'm nothing if not consistently annoying. Consistent. Let's go with consistent. It's Sunday, last day of my self quarantine before I go back to work tomorrow. Yay. I've been reading a lot of social media posts again today, people complaining about the gym. I don't know if I missed the gym per se. It's never been particularly entertaining to me. We thought it'd be funnier or much more entertaining if we could hear the calories scream while we burned them. That would be fun. But since we're told we shouldn't be going to the gym, I figure that counts as resistance training. That's my story and I'm sticking with it. Yesterday, I read a couple pages of the first book, Falling Awake, in that series. I thought today I would do a little bit of the second book, slightly thicker book, you'll notice this time than the first one being a novella, this one full-fledged novel. Whereas the first one, someone reviewed it and said it was metaphysical queer fic, which is, I've never thought I'd hit that genre. This one kind of went right for the horror, which I never thought I'd do. I'd always wanted to write a horror novel, just never realized it was going to. So again, this is an unrehearsed reading. I've been doing laundry most of the day too, so really haven't had time to rehearse. So if I flub it up, we're gonna both know, okay? So sit back, relax. If you're TC Blue, go to sleep. Otherwise, let's give this a listen and give it a shot, okay? Chapter 1, we're going to start at the beginning. This is only going to end one way. The stairs creaked under Andrew O'Donnell's 62-pound weight as he set one foot down, then raised the other and took another step up. He heard every deafening creak and moan each footfall caused. His heart sped right along with those sounds. He gasped for breath, but only until the noise quieted at long last. It wasn't that he was overweight. Andrew actually weighed slightly under the ideal for a 10-year-old boy and happened to be several inches taller than the average. Only his size didn't contribute to the sound either. The cacophony felt intensified because the house was so dark, so still, and so absolutely quiet, minus the creaking he caused, he'd be able to hear the screams of the dead if he listened hard enough. Not this again. Not again. I know what's up here. I know what's waiting for me on the second floor. Andrew gripped his tiny, ever-ready flashlight so hard the metal might bend. Not a smart thing to let happen, especially since it took him a month to collect enough bottles to turn in for money to buy the flashlight. The tool didn't do him a tremendous amount of good at the moment, since he had to keep his hand over the beam in case anybody was outside keeping an eye on the house. He didn't want to get caught. Not there. Not with what he knew waited upstairs. A few more loud squeaks and settling of the stairs later, Andrew stood at the foot of the long upstairs hallway. He held the flashlight against his chest, then used the back of his hand to wipe the perspiration from his damp forehead. A bead of sweat dripped down from the tangled mass of hair and went right into his eye, stinging it. Andrew waited several seconds for his vision to clear, then stared down the hallway. There were two doors, the closest directly to his left, closed. I don't want to go in there. I can't help anybody there now. They aren't alive, and they were the first to die. Andrew started forward, moving cautiously past the closed door and towards the end of the hallway where there used to be another. Framed photos hung along the wall on the right, but whenever he thought to look at them as he passed by, Andrew only saw blurred images. Pictures were memories, and since these particular ones weren't his, and the occupants of the house were long gone, the images had begun to fade, now blurs of what once was. How many times had he entered this room at the end of the hall? How many times had he stared at the broken door frame, studied the fragments splintered in a rage most people would never witness for themselves, glanced at the school textbooks, the hardcover Laidlaw readers on the way to Storyland, torn apart and in pieces on the floor. The overturned bed, dresser drawers that had been smashed against the wall, and clothes, ripped and shredded, strewn about. How many times had he stood there, inhaling deeply, learning the scent of those who butchered the two adults in the room down the hall, who had also taken their 10-year-old son out of the house? How often had he touched the sheets where his schoolmate, Thomas, had slept in that very room? How often had Andrew held one of his friend's shirts against his face and cried like a baby, knowing the boy would never again wear it? And how often had he blamed himself for what happened to Thomas after the boy's abduction? My fault. If only Andrew wanted to go to the carnival. Hadn't wanted to go to the carnival, big difference. If only he'd never asked his parents' permission, hadn't asked his older brother to go, and if only he hadn't asked Thomas to join them. If only Andrew steered them away from the shooting gallery when he felt the first stirrings of something wrong with the Barker. It wasn't the first time he'd sensed something about someone he didn't know. It also wasn't the last. I should have insisted we leave. I should have pulled you away. I should have kept you safe. Too many if-onlys and I should-haves. Andrew turned off his flashlight and moved across the room towards the window facing the main street, careful not to step on anything. There were so many sharp bits and pieces scattered across the floor, so many potential ways to get hurt. He stared into the night, at the farmland, at the lights from other houses with families too far away to have heard the screams or to have helped, and the skyline he couldn't see, but still knew existed. They were out there. They, the two men who'd done this, were somewhere out there in the distance. They, who had never been identified, who had vanished from the area without a trace, who inflicted the worst loss of innocence on a community in their wake, and the kind of scars not visible from the outside. They remained out there. They did this. No. A guttural voice, making a noise that sounded like it was partially blocked by something wet, gurgling, and sticky, corrected him. You did this. Andrew's heart hammered in his chest, and he nearly sent himself sprawling sideways when he whirled around. He gasped, and his legs wobbled under him, as if suddenly turning to rubber. The once handsome, blond-haired, blue-eyed, gentle, and very special young boy stood before him, only now there was blood seeping from Thomas's eyes, ears, and mouth, and from several slits and other punctures in his red-soaked t-shirt and pants. One arm dangled at an angle that shouldn't be possible, fingers also broken and pointing in directions they weren't made to, and a leg bent at the knee further forward than it had any right to be. Thomas! Andrew only managed to get the boy's name out before his throat seized up and hot tears streamed down his face. He couldn't bear to see his friend like this. His pal. The boy they knew was destined for great things, but who Andrew failed to protect. You led me right to them, Thomas rasped, blood spurting from his mouth and pooling below him on the wooden floor. You did this to me. No. Andrew hoped his denial would be accepted this time, that Thomas would finally forgive him and leave him be. But it was a lie, and Andrew knew it. They both knew it. He remained responsible for Thomas's death. He always had been. He always would be. I loved you. We all did. I would have given my life to save yours. You killed me. Thomas lunged. Andrew sat straight up in bed and screamed, his shivering body soaked in his own hot sweat. He screamed twice more, then his voice went hoarse, and his body racked with sobs. It took several long moments, but he finally calmed down enough to remember he wasn't in the town he spent less than a year in during his childhood. He was actually several states away in a hotel, and it was 14 years later, 1972, not 1958. So that's the taste of the first chapter. Hopefully it kind of piqued your interest. If so, you don't necessarily have to read the first book to read the second book. It's kind of nice to do. Other than that, hopefully everybody's still doing well. I now have the sun in my face. As you can see, this is kind of annoying. I should have shut the blinds before I did this. But hope everyone has a great weekend. Please take care of yourself, stay safe, and see you guys next time.